Chapter 31, Burrowing Depths. The walls were made of tightly packed soil and roots. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth. The narrow passage forced him to walk hunched over, the rough stones scraping against his shoulders as he moved deeper into the tunnel. Summoning two assault drones, one defensive drone and one recon drone. System notification. 4/4 active drones. 27 TP. 10 TP/min. With a mental command, he sent the two assault drones up ahead together with the recon drone. They sped up and vanished in the low light of the cramped tunnel. Mere seconds after the sounds of their twin Magitech cannons filled the tunnel, their crimson lights flashed in the distance. Following them at a steady pace, he noticed that the ground was littered with the bodies of giant beetles, their black chitons shattered and smoking. His Magitech rifle in hand, he crouched down and looked at one of them, the system window appearing in front of his vision. System notification. Name: Carapace Crawler. Type: Insectoid. Variant: Lesser. Level: 3. I have expected them to be lower level, but level 3? Well, no wonder my drones blazed through them, he thought as he kept walking through the low tunnel, his back bent as he moved, kicking the occasional corpse of a beetle out of the way after slipping over one of them and almost falling as a result of it. After a painful walk with a hunchback for over 5 minutes, the tunnel widened slightly, enough that he could stand upright without hitting his head. On one side of the tunnel was a large cluster of pulsating, greenish-purple fungi that cast a faint, eerie glow on the surrounding walls. Their caps were covered in a sticky, translucent slime that dripped slowly onto the floor, creating a soft, sizzling sound as it hit the stone. The air here was heavy with the scent of decay, the ground a mess of mud and beetle parts. The glow was almost blinding after the near pitch black of the tunnel behind him. His eyes scanned the cavern, taking in the details. He noticed that the fungal growth was not uniform. Some areas were denser than others, their light more intense. He also saw that the walls were covered in scrap marks, deeper and more numerous than before. He exhaled as he stretched his back, shouldering his rifle loosely. There were no more crimson flashes at the end of the tunnel. It was also very silent. The only reason he knew that his drones were still active was his mental connection to them. It took another 5 minutes before the path opened into a massive cavern, its ceiling high above, thick roots penetrating it while weaving in on themselves, forming a stable ceiling of roots and dirt, from which the corpse 5-meter-long centipede was dangling. Strange, pulsating fungi cast an eerie glow across the stone walls, their light dancing in shades of sickly green and deep violet. The ground beneath his feet was uneven, littered with jagged rocks and slick patches of dark, glistening slime. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and something sweet. His focus went on the centipede that was slightly swinging. It was dead, a single, large hole in its head, from which black fluid was dripping. As he examined the corpse, the system window opened in front of him again. System notification. Name: Venom Lasher. Type: Centipede. Variant: Greater. Level: 4. An elite on level 4. All my drones took it out without me even seeing it. This makes me wonder what the boss will look like, he thought while walking past the core. Back in the tunnels, he kept an eye out for anything that could jump him at any moment. His rifle was always ready to shoot, but all he found were dead beetles. As he wandered the tunnels, he stopped and turned towards the wall to his left. It was a path that his recon drone pinged him a while back. Striking it with the butt of his rifle, it sank slightly into the loose earth, leaning his rifle against the wall behind him to have both his hands free. Cyranok started digging in the loose earth. Shortly after, it fell in on itself and revealed a small alcove behind the dirt. In its center was a small chest, not bigger than a shoebox, made out of light-colored wood. It was not sealed or locked. The lid lifted with ease. The inside of the box was rather empty, just a small coin pouch with 6 silver coins and a short dagger in a sheath. After fixing them both to his belt, he drew the dagger from the sheath. The blade was about 20 cm long with a serrated back. The handle was simple black wood with no ornaments. The steel was dark, almost black with a faint green sheen to it. It was sharp as he tested it on a nearby root. Item. Name: Corroded Fan. Type: One-handed dagger. Rarity: Uncommon. Level: 5. The corroded fan appears to be crudely made, possibly from parts of creatures within the burrowing depths themselves. The greenish tint on the blade is not a cosmetic choice but a sign of a weak, persistent corrosive agent. While not powerful enough to dissolve armor quickly, it can compromise weaker materials and cause wounds that resist mundane healing. Not bad for a random find in a wall. It's better than nothing, mumbling softly as he placed the dagger back in its sheath. This is a nice bonus, but I still prefer a gun over a knife, he thought while pulling the rifle from the wall and continued walking down the tunnel. The end of it was not far away. The walls started to become smoother and the roots thicker. The tunnel itself seemed to be carved instead of dug. The air was warmer, the smell of earth was replaced by a faint, metallic scent. The pulsating fungi became more frequent, the light brighter and more intense. The tunnel ended in a large, circular cavern. The walls were almost barren except for the few occasional patches of fungi, and yet this was the brightest place he has been since entering this place. Littering the floor were massive pits filled with bright orange liquid, which glowed. A wave of heat washed over him. The air was so hot it felt difficult to breathe. Chapter 32. Where is the rest? Cyranox entered the chamber, keeping its distance from the pools of orange liquid, his eyes landing on a massive grub-like creature. It was roughly 2.5 meters long, its pale white, segmented body glistening with moisture. It had short legs or arms at its front. On its top half was a dark carapace, its color almost black. On its side were a few holes that leak a liquid similar to the orange stuff in the pools. It was then that his drones were forcefully dismissed, as his TP was not sufficient to pay the upkeep. 0/4 active drones. Fuck! Just in the worst moment, he muttered while brandishing his rifle. Cyranox carefully moved closer to get a better look, the system window opening in front of him as he got within a few meters of the creature. System notification. Name: Flame Spewer. Type: Larva. Variant: Greater. Level: 6. After he was close enough, he saw that the holes in its side were probably the result of his assault drones. With the verification that it was dead, he relaxed again. His eyes scanned the walls of the chamber, finding the exit relatively fast. He was on the other side of the pits with the orange liquid. With a mental sigh, he walked along the pits toward the exit. The heat of the pits was nearly unbearable as he walked between them. He slipped into the crack in the wall that led further down. Dead beetles and centipedes were littering the floor. They were not as numerous as in the other one, but still in a large quantity. The walls were similar to the ones in the tunnel before, but they were smooth. About 20 minutes of walking later, he came across a small group of living beetles and centipedes. They were the same as his drones fought before, their black shells shimmering with a metallic luster in the dim light. He raised his rifle and fired, the violet beam striking the lead beetle and carving a path through its body. The smell of burnt carapace filled the air as the other beetles turned to face him, their mandibles clicking. He fired again. Another beam of violet energy lanced through the darkness, striking another beetle and piercing its body. The remaining beetles charged, their mandibles snapping as they closed the distance between them. Cyranox summoned one offensive drone. System notification. 1/4 active drones. 7 TP plus 4 TP/min. It came into existence and shoot at the critters. His violet beam pierced right through them. While he fired his rifle, the smell of burnt carapace filled the air as another beetle fell to his drone. Another beam of violet energy lanced through the darkness, cutting a centipede in two. He kept walking and shooting, the beetles and centipedes falling one after another to the combined fire of him and his drone. The corridor was narrow, the ceiling low, and the air was thick with the smell of burnt chitin. With his drone once again flying ahead, he saw the violet flashes of its beam emitter cannon in the distance. Not even 5 minutes later, there were multiple system windows in front of him. System notification. Congratulations, you are the first to clear the dungeon. Burrowing depths. Reward: +5 all stats. +5 all stats applied. X10 dungeon reward. System notification. Alert! You achieved first clear of burrowing depths without a party. Reward: +5% all stats. +5% all stats applied. X4 dungeon reward. System notification. You have cleared dungeon, burrowing depths. 120x lesser carapace crawler. 77x lesser venom lasher. 1x elite greater venom lasher. 1x elite greater flame spewer. 1x boss greater depths devourer. +8000x. He ran through the tunnel. A few minutes later, he reached the chamber, and seeing the massive centipede-like creature, its black armored shell was cracked and scorched. The creature's many legs curled beneath its body. Its head was a mess of blackened flesh and shattered chitin. The beam must have struck it right between the eyes. His mouth was open as he looked at the corpse. The sheer size of it was impressive. It was at least 20 meters long. As he got closer, a system window opened up. System notification. Name: Depths Devourer. Type: Centipede. Variant: Greater. Level: 7. So the boss of this dungeon is just dead, and it seems to be a level 7? This dungeon is a joke, he thought while looking around. What kind of joke is this? That motherfucking monstrosity of a lesser broodmother was level 15, and this dungeon has a level 7 greater beast as its boss. He shouted in frustration, his rage rising. Bullshit. He called into the darkness of the dungeon while looking at the chest that had already materialized next to the corpse. The dark wood and silver inlay shimmering in the dim light. He opened it. Inside was a small pouch of coins, a red skill stone, and a silver ring. Inside the pouch were 12 of the familiar silver coins. He took the small pouch and placed it into his bag. Then he took the silver ring between his fingers and looked at the ring. It was a simple silver band with no stone set in it, nor writing. After putting it on, the ring adjusting to his finger size perfectly. Item. Name: Minor Storage Ring. Type: Accessory. Rarity: Uncommon. Level: 1. The minor storage ring is a fundamental utility item, a gateway to the personal inventory systems granted by the system. While its capacity is limited to 1 M3, it represents a significant step up from carrying physical burdens. The ring's enchantment is exceptionally basic, connecting the user's consciousness to a tiny, stable pocket dimension. Cyranox took the skill stone. It was the same as the others he found in the previous dungeon. Cyranox held the crystal in his hand and thought about it entering the ring's space. But whatever he tried, nothing worked, until he held the item towards the ring itself and thought about storing the skill stone. It vanished from his hand in a cloud of faint blue light. He then focused on the ring and a small mental window opened in front of him. He looked at the massive corpse once again and kicked it. The chitin was hard and unyielding. With another frustrated kick, he turned around and walked towards the exit, a swirling blue mass. He stepped through it, the world twisting around him for a brief moment before he found himself back in the forest. He looked at the dead tree, its hollow trunk still glowing with a now darker blue light. A new system window opened in front of him. Dungeon. Name: Burrowing Depths. Level: 5. Status: 7H58 min. What a joke. Chapter 33. Node Guardian. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant call of an unfamiliar bird and the faint, almost imperceptible hum of mana that now permeated the world. The portal itself pulsed within the dead tree's hollowed trunk, a deep, angry blue, the veins of purple spreading like a disease across the bark, marking its intrusion into this once peaceful place. Cyranox dismissed the dungeon window with a flicker of irritation, the anticlimactic clear leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. He sat back down on the rock that was close by, and unpacked some of his rations he packed. While he does that, 3 recon drones appear and fly off into different directions. System notification. 3/4 active drones. 15 TP, plus 1 TP/min. He pulled a crinkled foil package from the backpack. The bright, cheerful logo for some chocolate-dipped breakfast pastry felt obscenely out of place here, a relic from a world that was already feeling like a lifetime ago. He tore it open with his teeth, the scent of artificial sweetness and stale grain filling the air. The pastry was crushed, its filling oozing from the sides, but he ate it anyway in 3 quick bites. It was tasteful, a bit dry in his mouth, but it was calories. He followed it with a swig of lukewarm sweet tea from a plastic bottle. He crumpled up the trash before stuffed it back into his pack, leaving no trace. As he finished, a ping from one of his recon drones arrived in his mind, a map and a single, persistent anomaly. A concentrated signature of mana that didn't match the dungeon, smaller but more complex, located roughly 5 kilometers to the southwest. The anticlimax of the burrowing depths faded, replaced by a sharp focus. His nostrils flared once. He stood, dusting off his pants, and summoned a travel drone. The disc materialized with a soft hum, and as he stepped onto it, he gave the silent command. The drone lifted smoothly, rising above the canopy, and then accelerated toward the unknown signal, leaving the hollow, glowing tomb behind. System notification. 2/4 active drones. 7 TP plus 0 TP/min. Whatever that is, it has to be something good. The thought was simple as he lay on the drone while the world beneath him was rushing by. The forest stretched out, an endless sea of green with a few strange rock formations scattered about. He had been traveling for about 20 minutes when the drone slowed. The anomaly was directly below him. He descended slowly. He dismissed the drone and dropped the last few meters. He landed softly, his boot sinking into the moss-covered ground. The anomaly seemed to be coming from a small clearing, in the center of which was a strange rock formation. It was a cluster of smooth, black stones, arranged in a perfect circle, roughly 5 meters in diameter. The stones were warm to the touch, and they seemed to pulse with a faint, blue light. System notification. Name, Plan Node. Level, 15. Status, unclaimed. Ownership, requires lodestone or equivalent authority. Cyronox's eyes widened slightly as he read the notification. A slow grin creeps up his face. He summoned 2 assault, 1 offensive and 1 defensive drone. They materialized around him and gave them mental commands to spread out and take advantageous positions. They took off except for the defensive drone that just floated up a bit higher above him. As his hand brushes over the surface of the center stone, a system window appeared over the center stone, followed by a voice. System announcement. Intruder detected. Summoning Node Guardian. Intruder detected. Summoning Node Guardian. The stone circle responded to his touch with a violent surge of power. The blue light within the stones flared, pulsing like a frantic heartbeat, casting dancing shadows that writhed like living things across the clearing. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something ancient, something wild. The ground between the stones began to churn and heave, soil and moss tearing upwards as if clawed by invisible hands from below. A deep, guttural groan vibrated through the soles of his boots, a sound not of stone grinding, but of immense muscle and bone awakening after a long slumber. The mound of earth bulged violently, then split apart. A massive, moose-like head, crowned with formidable, flattened antlers of hardened bone, pushed its way into the light. Its fur was coarse and dark brown, its nose a wide, leathery snout that flared as it scented the air. System notification. Name, Pronghorn Ravager. Type, mammalian hybrid. Variant, greater. Level, 16. The creature hauled its colossal body from the earth, its sheer size making the clearing feel suddenly small. It stood over 3.5 meters at the shoulder, a terrifying fusion of a moose's powerful frame and the raw, muscular build of a bear. Thick, powerful legs ended not in hooves, but in massive, bear-like paws armed with long, sharp claws. It shook its head, sending clumps of damp earth flying, and its nostrils flared again, its breath misting in the charged air. A primal roar tore from its throat, a sound so profound it disoriented Cyronox for a split second, making the world seem to warp around the edges. There was no moment of assessment, no posturing. The Ravager's dark eyes fixed on him, its legs bunching with terrifying speed, and it charged. The ground trembled under its immense bulk, trees groaning as it brushed past them. The defensive drone reacted instantly, its hexagonal barrier flaring into existence just as the Ravager lowered its head, the flattened antlers aimed squarely at Cyronox. The impact was not a collision, but an explosion. The blue shield screamed under the force, glowing plates cracking and flickering wildly. Cyronox was thrown back several meters by the shockwave, the sheer power of the charge leaving him breathless. The Ravager recoiled, shaking its head from the impact, its lips drawing back in a snarl before it began to circle, preparing for its next devastating assault. His drones didn't wait for his command after he got attacked. They opened fire on the Ravager. Crimson beams poured down on it while heavy violet beams tore into his flesh, carving a chunk out of its shoulder. Meanwhile, Cyronox got up from between the stones, his shoulder hurting like hell. The Ravager got up on its hind legs and swiped his massive claw at the already weakened barrier, breaking right through as it dissolves into motes of blue sparks, just like the defensive drone itself. Cyronox pulled his rifle to his shoulder and fired the violet beam, slamming into the chest of the Ravager. pushing it slightly back. It lost its balance and fell backwards, swiping at one of the drones as it fell. The drone got caught in its claws and pulled down with it. On the ground, it ripped it apart. The metallic shell gave way with a sickening crunch, sparks showering the forest floor as its lens shattered. Cyranox summoned a new defensive, an assault drone, while the Ravager was down. The air crackled with energy as fresh materialized shapes flickered into existence, their hum cutting through the beast's panted breaths. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of burned flesh and fur. The combined assault of crimson and violet beams painted the clearing in violent strobes. It focused on the drones for a while, its massive paws swatting at the buzzing irritants with increasing force, but after some time it noticed that however many it destroyed, they just kept coming. The beast's dark eyes, once narrowed, now held a flicker of confusion, its head cocked to the side as it struggled to comprehend the unending stream of objects. A deafening roar shattered its brief hesitation. It charged not at the floating spectres of death, but at their master, the source of its agony. The assault drones fired as it advanced, their beams searing its hide, but it ignored the pain. Cyranox brought his rifle up, but he was too slow. The world spun, a blur of brown fur and raw force. A colossal paw connected with his chest, and he was airborne again, a ragdoll flung through the undergrowth. He slammed into a tree trunk with a sickening crack, the impact driving the air from his lungs and sending a blinding flash of pain through his torso. He slid down the rough bark, landing in a heap at its base, his vision swimming with black spots. "Oh, fuck, that hurt," he coughed out. Through the haze of pain, he saw the Ravager turn its attention back to the remaining drones, its fury renewed by his temporary removal from the fight. It lunged, claws extended, and another assault drone. With a sickening crunch, a violet beam burst out its left front joint, leaving its lip. Recoiling from the pain, the Ravager let out a roar as it tore once again through the barrier made from hexagonal segments. Cyranox pushed himself off the ground and leaned against the trunk, shouldering its weapon before a violet energy gathered in the Magitech rifle. After 5 seconds, he released the energy. A violent beam of violet swirling energy crashed into its side, ripping right through its thick hide and muscles beneath. It turned its massive head towards him and charged. A new defensive drone formed its barrier, fresh and active. Mere moments before impact, the Ravager lowered its head, making contact with its massive antlers. The barrier flared up violently before bursting into blue sparks. It kept it in place just long enough for the offensive drone to charge up its overcharged beam emitter and releasing a thick violet beam that penetrated through the base of its neck, piercing right through into the ground below. The Ravager fell forward lifelessly. System notification. "Congratulations, you have killed the Node Guardian. Node can now be claimed. Lodestone required." System notification. "Congratulations, you have been the first to kill a Node Guardian. Your first claiming time will be null. Reward, +5 all stats. +5 all stats applied. Priori for X." Chapter 34. Yelp. Cyranox slumped down against the trunk of the tree, his rifle falling to the side as he dismissed his drones, and summoned one healing and one cargo drone. The drone with its shimmering white surface and pulsing teal lens descended upon him, its warm light enveloping his battered body. He felt a tingling sensation as the green light washed over him, sealing the gashes and mending the fractured bone in his chest. The cargo drone rose silently into the air, its metallic body reflecting the dim light as it sped off towards the house. He closed his eyes, letting the healing drone do its work, the pain slowly fading away. That was intense, he thought as he watched the healing drone do its work, his HP slowly climbing back to its maximum. The cargo drone returned an hour later with a lodestone in its spatial storage. He dismissed the healing drone and took the lodestone from the cargo drone, its warmth a familiar comfort in his hands. Afterwards he dismissed the cargo drone again and slowly pushed himself up, slowly walking over towards the center stone. The moment he was inside the circle of stones, the lodestone emitted a golden light, its runes glowing brighter and brighter. The stones themselves responded, their blue light intensifying, merging with the gold of the lodestone to create a blinding pillar of light that shot up into the sky. The ground shook, but this time it wasn't violent. It was a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through his very bones. System notification. "Congratulations, you have established a guild. Please name your guild. It will be known as Kingdoms, the one and only, once banished, now back stronger than ever. For a fleeting moment, Cyranox remembered the time he spent with whom he considered his friends. Everything was simple back then, back when the monsters were just pixels on a screen and not a danger to him personally. The guild that he and his friends created, that was hated not by all but most. They never did something wrong per se. It was more how they did it that struck the wrong chord in others. They only did what the game had offered them. Never more. But in the end, they were a bunch of fucking assholes. He chuckled at the thought before his attention got whisked away by a new window. System notification. Guild name, King Games. Guild Master, Cyranox. Guild level, 1. Guild members, 1/30. Guild base, generating. The pillar of light was a constant hum, while the system window was processing. It vibrated through Cyranox's bones, a resonant thrum that harmonized with the golden energy pouring from the lodestone that was hovering above the central stone. The air itself seemed to crackle and shimmer, charged with the raw potential of creation. The system window in his vision, its text clear against the backdrop of swirling light, yet it remained static. The processing status unchanging. System notification. Please choose the type of your guild building. Before he could look at the provided list, a second window opened up on top of it. System notification. Congratulations! You are the first to establish the guild. All types of building are unlocked for this selection. Additionally, the guild receives a system boon after its creation is complete. His smile was gone the moment he closed the second system window. All the joy of the previously mentioned boon was gone. Oh, fun. Fucking. Tastic. Another list with thousands of options. He cursed in his mind, while scrolling through the never-ending list of building types. While scrolling through the endless, shimmering list of potential structures, Cyranox felt a familiar frustration building. The names alone were a jumbled mess of eras, from the brutally utilitarian, brutalist bunker complex to the impossibly ornate celestial spire of the stargazers. He saw styles, ranging from Gothic revival keep to geodesic biosphere, and properties as mundane as residential hablock and as esoteric as temporal anomalies stabilizer. It was a headache. He focused his will, filtering the overwhelming data down to a few core concepts that resonated with his pragmatic, power-hungry mindset. Can I just get a heavy fortress? He thought, projecting the idea. System response. Request accepted. Refining search parameters. Fortified, defensible, utilitarian, multi-purpose. The list condensed dramatically, but the options were still too abstract. He pictured what he needed in his mind's eye: thick, imposing walls that could withstand a siege, defensive positions, room for expansion, and a design that spoke of absolute control, not aesthetic beauty. System notification. Refining search based on user's intent. Proposing Fortress of Iron Will. The name struck a chord. Without hesitation, he accepted. System notification. Selection confirmed. Fortress of Iron Will. Guild-based generation commencing. Error. System boon granted, based on class of the current guild leader. Redesigning guild base. Generation confirmed. Magitech Fortress Tower. Guild-based generation commencing. The pillar of light fractured, splitting into thousands of golden threads that laced out across the clearing. They wove through the air, tracing the blueprint of a structure that only existed in the system. Cyranox got picked up and slowly floated over to the side, by thin threads of light. While stone and metal began to coalesce from the raw mana in the air, the ground groaning as a foundation of seamless, dark grey stone was laid. Walls, meters thick, rose from the earth in silence, their surfaces etched with subtle runes. A central tower began to take shape, its design a strange mixture of Gothic fortress and highly advanced Magite. Flying buttresses of blackened steel ribbed the tower's sides, connecting to a massive, tapering structure that stretched toward the sky, breaking through the clouds above. As it grew, narrow, slit-like windows appeared, their depths glowing with a faint violet light. A flat, reinforced roof formed at the very top, surrounded by several spindly antenna-like spikes. The tower ascended with unnerving speed, its growth a silent process that seemed to defy gravity. Faint violet lights glowed at its outside, that pulsed in a steady beat that traveled up the tower in a wave, causing the lights to brighten. The antenna-like spikes at its crown began to flash whenever the pulse reached the top. The entire structure was a masterpiece of architecture, a fortress that was both beautiful and terrifying. The pillar of light dissolved, and the tower stood complete, a silent, imposing sentinel in the heart of the forest. System notification. Guild base generation complete. Magitech Fortress Tower. King Ames has been established. System boom applied. Autonomous drone tower. Can power and control 5 drones per guild level. Global announcement. The first guild has been established. Name, King Ames. He simply stood there, staring up at the hundreds of meters tall tower, fully aware that he had just watched an entire fortress get printed into existence in less time than it normally took him to cook dinner. Chapter 35. The Tower. After a few seconds of staring at the tower, Cyranox got closer to the base of it. The closer he got, the more oppressive its scale became. He passed beneath the first high arch, one of 4 positioned at the cardinal directions. It was freestanding, massive flying buttresses curving almost diagonally upwards from its corner tops. High above near the top, they connected to the tower's outer wall, merging seamlessly with the buttresses of the neighboring arches. Between this arch and the neighboring one stood a smaller auxiliary tower. Its purpose became obvious at a glance, each one tied directly into the same junction points, creating rigid, 3-way connections that looked less decorative and more like reinforcement. Whatever forces this structure was meant to endure, they had been accounted for. Their tops were flat, or at least he couldn't make out any domes or spires on them. His boots touched the dark grey, smooth granite-like stone that served as the foundation. A few meters ahead stood a second arch, smaller and set above a short flight of steps. Its own flying buttresses extended from its peak, anchoring into the tower roughly halfway up the wall on either side of the entrance. He climbed up the few steps beneath the second arch and continued toward the tower proper. At its base, a wide open archway awaited him, identical to the others, set into the structure. A final set of steps led inside. The floor beyond was a lighter shade of grey, smooth and almost polished, seamless, as though carved from a single slab of stone. He could just walk inside the ground level of the tower. There was no door nor gate, just 4 wide open archways that led into the tower's ground level. The entrance corridor stretched deep into the structure, nearly 20 meters long, its walls so thick that the outside world vanished long before he reached the interior. Beyond the corridor, the space opened abruptly. The walls did not form a solid boundary, but extended inward at intervals, dividing the chamber into quarters. Running along the perimeter was a raised outer ring, roughly a meter high, interrupted by deliberate gaps at the center and ends of each quarter, wide enough to comfortably step through to the other side. At the heart of the roughly 80-meter wide chamber stood the land node center stone. It was surrounded by a ring of hexagonal pillars that reached up against the 15 to 20-meter high ceiling, pulsing conduits running up their sides. The pillars themselves were each several meters thick but spaced out wide enough to leave the node center stone wide open and unprotected. He walked over to the center stone, past the pulsing pillars. The land node looked almost identical to before, just that instead of the wild lines and runes from before, it now bore the logo from his past. The letters KG with a crown on top and open wings on each side. Without thinking, he ran his fingers along the old logo of his guild. As he touched the stone, 2 windows opened side by side. On the left was something like a basic overview, while on the right was a menu of sorts. Guild notification. Guild name, King Ames. Guild master, Cyranox. Guild level, 1. Guild members, 1/30. Guild notification. Travel between floors. Guild administration. Summon drone. As he thought about the floors, he got 4 new choices. 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor, roof. Well, alright, let's check out the 2nd floor then. Cyranox chose the 2nd floor and got whisked away, now standing in a smaller chamber. The center stone was still in front of him, but the walls were now where the pillars had been before. And 4 corridors went out of the chamber. He picked a random one and walked into it. The faint glow of light came from a conduit that ran along the bottom of the wall, illuminating the floor, and it didn't take long at all before he came across the first door. He opened it, and was greeted by a rather small apartment-like space. On the right was a living area with a sofa and a small table, The left side was dominated by a bed big enough for 2 or maybe 3 people. Behind another door was a bathroom with a small toilet, a sink, and a shower. The kitchen was integrated into the living area, separated by a half wall with a sink, a small fridge, and 2 hot plates. He walked over to the window, a 1 meter high and 20 centimeter wide slit in the wall. The view was not great, just a lot of trees. Who would want to live here? Not me, that's for sure. He thought while closing the door and walking back down the corridor, looking into another room that was identical to the one before. The third and fourth rooms were identical as well. All 4 of them were rather small and cramped. What is this place? A hotel? He thought while walking back into the chamber with a stone. He chose the 3rd floor, and once again got whisked away. Once again standing inside a similar-looking room as on the 2nd floor. He didn't know what exactly it was, but something looked different. It was as if the light was different, or the color of the stone. He shook his head and walked down one of the corridors. Yet again, there were doors to either side at equal intervals. He opened one and was greeted by another apartment-like space. Just that this time, it was not just one bedroom. He looked straight at an inner hallway. He stepped inside, and as he did, warm yellow light filled the space. This place had everything he had thought about earlier. A small kitchen, a living room, a separate bathroom with a bathtub, and a separate bedroom with a big bed. The entire apartment looked much cleaner, more expensive, and the living room had a large window that stretched from floor to ceiling, showing a breathtaking view over the forest canopy. The walls were a soft beige, the furniture dark wood, and the floor was covered with a thick, soft carpet. Now this is more like it, he said out loud while walking over to the window, looking out over the forest. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over the trees. The view was stunning, a stark contrast to the cramped utilitarian rooms on the floor below. The entire apartment felt more like a penthouse suite than a guild member's quarters. He looked at the king-sized bed in the bedroom, a sly smile spreading across his face. This would be his room, no question about it. He walked back into the main chamber, where the node stove was pulsing with a soft blue light. He looked at the 4 other corridors, wondering what they contained. He picked one and walked down it, opening the first door he came across. The room was identical to his own. He opened the next door, and the next. All of them were the same,